So hello and welcome to Coffee Break, where we discuss trending topics and innovations of interest, all in the time it takes you to drink a cup of coffee. So hope everybody's got their cup brewed, have a cup of fresh coffee, a glass or a cup of your favorite beverage, and let's get started. So I'm Ross Ayat, I am your host, and today marks the first episode of our 4th season. So for those of you who have been with us before, welcome back. For those of you who are new, welcome in. I hope you find topics of interest and things to learn here. So today's topic is around our MPLAB tools, a new extension of our MPLAB tools portfolio, specifically a cloud-based version of MPLAB Express. Here to provide the details for that from the faraway fjords of Norway is Glenn Nilsson. Glenn, welcome.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Great, thanks. And before we get started, I'd also like to introduce my partner in crime, the man behind the glass, Austin Caphammer. Austin is going to be managing all the stuff that happens behind the screen. He'll be moderating the chat, he'll be handling all of the flow of information, and generally trying to keep me out of trouble.
Hey, thanks for having me, Ross. I'm really excited to discuss our MPLAB cloud ecosystem with you today. And here at Microchip, we are broadcasting live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Also, please submit your questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer those live at the end of the episode. Also, we'll have some experts that are standing by in the chat to hopefully answer a couple via text in the chat while we are broadcasting here. Also, don't forget to like and share this presentation. We greatly appreciate that. And if you do prefer to submit your questions via email, you can do so at livestream@microchip.com. So that's it from me.
Great.
And back to you, Ross.
Thanks very much. All right. So, Glenn, let's get started. Microchip has a long history of providing a suite of powerful development tools for our users, and MPLAB Express has been an important part of that ecosystem. We've had an online version for some time, but tell us what's new. What are we bringing out this week, and why is that interesting for our user base?
So yes, we've had a version of Express before, so this is a major upgrade to that. And what we have now, more than just Express, is more an ecosystem with all the different pieces designed to work quite smoothly together. So MPLAB Discover is a single place where you can go and find example projects, Microchip tested example projects from all different business units. And what we're seeing all the way through the tools ecosystem here as well is a much stronger integration with GitHub and more modern software distribution flows.
Okay, so I assume that Discover is aptly named because that's where people go to start their projects, to find out what they need and to discover options for their next design.
Absolutely. So often in the prototyping phase of a project, a customer will look for projects quite similar to what they're trying to design. They might end up finding something which has a superset of features and remove a few features, or maybe get 3 out of 4 of the main features that they're looking for, and then maybe piece together the proof of concept from a couple of projects. So what's great about Discover is that, as I mentioned, we now have a single place for Microchip distributed example projects. So even if you're used to using MPLAB Code Configurator, MCC, the filtering as you're starting to look for a particular type of functionality in a project will also search MPLAB Harmony-based projects. And maybe you would never considered that as an option for your project. But if you see that there's a lot more support in there for certain types of technologies, then you can select the right Microchip platform for the needs of your particular project.
All right, so someone goes in and they go through the Discover process and they search through the database and they find something that looks appropriate, that looks like the right thing for their next project. What's the next step?
Yeah, so you'll see a list of projects which meet your filtering requirements, and then as you click on one of the projects, what you'll bring up is the readme.md file from the associated GitHub repository, because each of the example projects on Discover is in fact a GitHub repository. So in this README, you'll typically get a description of the project, what it does, what you need to do in order to run the project, what hardware it runs on, etc., etc. And then you can see that there's a number of different options. You can add it to a list and then go back to the filtered results and see if there's another project which better matches what you're looking for. You can immediately download to use the project in either of the two supported IDEs, which is Microchip Studio, the rebranding of Atmel Studio, or MPLAB X IDE. And then you're left with two options to open the project online. You can directly go to the associated GitHub directory, or you can open in MPLAB Express.
All right, so let's talk about what happens next if you choose Express as your target.
So if you open in Xpress, what you'll see happening in the background as the project is loading is you'll get some confirmation messages that the project is being cloned from Git or GitHub. And so the project opens and you can see that there's a very similar look and feel to the layout of the IDE to what you would be used to in the offline version of MPLAB X IDE. And in terms of the sign-on, the My Microchip account is used as, so as you open that project, you'll be asked to just sign on to your My Microchip account so that you will then associate that project with your own sandbox in My Microchip. That sandbox is temporary, and so we encourage you to then save your projects on Git by committing to a repository.
And if you go the GitHub route?
So the GitHub route, you have the option of opening there. You can navigate the repository and see all the different files. And from there, you might want to then copy the repository URL, and then back in Express you could add that Git remote. So you'll see that there's a number of Git commands and integration supported in the IDE. Out of the picture in this slide, that you can easily switch between branches and things like that as well.
So I also understand that there is a new feature in the Microchip Code Configurator in the MCC that goes with this release as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So we are introducing a new flavor of MCC. So there's kind of both an upgrade to some of the configurator aspects of MCC. So MCC is the MPLAB Code Configurator. So it configures software, but the configurator itself has a lot of features. So what you're seeing in screen now is the MCC Builder. And this gives you a much greater context to the configuration of certain components. So in the example in this particular slide, we can see that we have a Bluetooth module, the RN487, and that happens to be connected to UART 0. So as you're busy making the configuration or configuring UART 0, you know very clearly what the requirements are, because those are the requirements of your Bluetooth module.
Great. So you mentioned at the beginning that there's been an online version of Express for some time now, and it's been quite popular and well used. What's the reasoning or what's the thought behind bringing out the cloud-based version? What did we see, or what did our users tell us that they wanted that this iteration or this upgrade provides them?
So it's especially useful for new users of Microchip tools, because there's a lot of different components. If you're installing MPLAB X IDE, you install the IDE, and then you find and download the compiler that you want to use, the different variations of the XE compiler, XE8 1632. So you install the compiler separately, and if you're wanting to use MCC, you add that as a plugin. So the offline IDE is incredibly powerful and flexible, but if you're finding a project in Discover and maybe you're fairly new to Microchip, all of these components are just there for you. They're ready. You can open the project and explore the code and see if this is the right project for you to use as a starting point and to build on. And you won't have to struggle with getting these different pieces all working together.
Great. So, and where can folks go to find out more information and to get a little bit more detail?
So, MPLAB-discover.microchip.com or MPLAB-expresside.microchip.com are the two websites for Discover and Xpress. You'll probably want to start with Discover, find an example project, and then open it in Xpress. And then linked in the description of this video, you'll also see a video playlist, I think 6 videos, which I have made covering different aspects of these online tools. We give an overview video of all the tools. We give you an overview of the different filtering on Discover, showing you how to practically open all the different ways you can open Discover projects. And then we have a couple of videos on GitHub integration into Xpress, debugging, both hardware and breakpoint debugging, hardware and simulator debugging in Xpress, and then we give you an overview of the MCC Builder.
Great. Thanks very much. That's a great overview and a great quick tour. Austin, questions? Anything from the audience that pops up of interest?
Absolutely. We do have a couple questions. The first is going to be via email for Glenn. What have you found are the most useful debugging tools when working online with Xpress?
So there's a couple of options. We have a simulator built in to Xpress, so you can often set some breakpoints and debug immediately like that. You can also install a plugin which allows you to do hardware debugging. If you want to do that, I suggest you watch the video related to that in the description below. But also, what I found especially useful is using the standalone version of the MPLAB data visualizer from Xpress. It's incredibly quick to compile and download a hex file from Xpress and drop it onto a board. And most of the development boards these days, like one of these Curiosity Nanos that I have here, they come up as a USB drive on your computer. So dropping the hex file on there, and then if you've integrated some support for the data visualizer into your project, you can very quickly verify functionality of your application that way.
Perfect. Thank you, Glenn. We have another question from Alexander via YouTube. What is the license of the example code, and can it be used or reused in commercial projects?
I believe that it can be. Yes, I can't remember the exact license terms, but you will see in all of the source code files, there's actually a description of the license. So the license is very easily seen from in the source code of whatever the examples are.
Perfect. Thanks, Glenn. So we have another question via email. How are security concerns addressed, considering one is developing on the cloud?
So there's two aspects to the security here. One is that all the projects associated with Xpress are linked to your Microchip account. That's a very established platform. For example, if you're buying a pro version of any of the XC compilers, they're linked to your Microchip account. And then in terms of the other aspect of the security with the sharing and modifying of code, that's all built on top of Git and GitHub. So obviously that's a very well established platform as well, and industry leading security in terms of code.
Perfect. Thanks, Glenn. Another question here from PLC Worker on YouTube. MPLAB IDE may disappear as software when installed on a computer to only exist in the cloud? This poses a question. I'm sorry if I stated it otherwise.
Oh, no. So one of the key features of Xpress is that at any time you can export the project, download it, and continue working in the full-featured offline version of the IDE. So the offline version of the IDE will always be available, and it has a lot of flexibility and a lot of great features. For example, address breakpoints, being able to set a breakpoint on a change of a register value. So those kind of features will only be available on the offline version of the IDE. Online, you'll get a line breakpoint. So it's kind of a complement to the overall tools ecosystem offering, having the options online.
All right, Glenn. Well, I know it's getting late over there in Norway, so I've got one more here for you. Via email, is there any advantage to exploring Discover projects in Xpress as opposed to just viewing the code on GitHub?
So super users of Git will quite easily know that within a GitHub repository, you can easily navigate all the source code files. If, for example, it happens to be an MPLAB Code Configurator based project, you'll be able to open MCC in Xpress and navigate the various software components which make up that project and actually explore the different configurations of each of those. You'll be able to make modifications to the code and compile it and download it and run it. So I think it's a great complement to being able to have both, right? Because I'm sure most people nowadays are, or at least a lot, and are starting to standardize on Git. Or at least that's what Microchip is doing. Often, if we have application notes released these days, sometimes the application notes have small snippets of code, but then we also have links to the associated GitHub repositories where you'll be able to see the full example, the full context of the example. So it's very useful to be able to directly go to the examples on GitHub if you want, or to be able to just see the code and start playing with it on Xpress.
Perfect, Glenn. Well, thank you so much for fielding these questions. And if we didn't have a chance to get back to you as an audience member, feel free to once again submit those questions to livestream@microchip.com in the chat. We'll get back to you as soon as possible. And make sure to view those links that are available in the description. Back to you, Ross.
Thanks so much. And I think that kind of wraps up our conversation for today. As I mentioned at the outset, this is the first episode of Season 4. This episode will be archived for you to go back and revisit if you so wish. Along with all of the content from our previous 3 seasons. I believe that this episode makes the 20th, I believe, or 19th or 20th, somewhere there. So go take a look, and while you're there, there's a lot more content beyond just the coffee breaks. There's all kinds of live stream content there. So feel free to rummage around. It may be something to perk up your day. And I'm contractually obligated to use that joke. It is written in my contract, so you will hear it again. So enjoy it as it comes around each time. But I'd like to thank Glenn. Thanks for staying up late and being part of this. Austin, the team here in the studio, flawless as always. To you, our audience, thanks for being here. Thanks for coming back. I hope this was profitable time for you. We look forward to seeing you again. 2 weeks and 1 day. So usually it's 2 weeks on a Wednesday. The next episode will be the 22nd of July, where we will be talking about GPS infrastructure. So until then, stay happy, stay healthy, stay curious, and keep on learning. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.